back in the day when I was a young lad, which was a very, very long time ago, people didn't really care as much about their cars as they do today. But nowadays, we are spending an obscene amount of money every year on car care products. We're also showing off our cars regularly on Instagram, on Facebook, on your social media of choice. You want people to say, wow, that looks nice. So, with that in mind, does the original T-Cut still cut the mustard? Not just that, but how does it compare to its modern counterpart, the Rapid Scratch Remover? And how do these both compare to a dedicated modern compound like Meguiar's Ultimate Compound? That's all coming up. So let's talk about the differences very, very quickly here. The original T-Cut Color Restorer. If you look at the label here, you'll see the picture of the car there. It's got a faded section on one side and then a nice rich section on the other. That was its purpose. It was designed to cut through old school single stage paint. That means that those were paints which, unlike modern paints, they didn't have a clear layer of lacquer over the top. Usually that lacquer contains UV inhibitors, which helps to keep the paint from fading. So this is no longer a requirement because seeing faded paint is almost unheard of nowadays. So instead, they brought out the Rapid Scratch Remover. You'll see there on the label that the car is a single color, which means it's not here to restore color at all. It's here to just make it look nice. Also, it does mention on the original T-Cut on the bottle at the bottom, it says that if you have a metallic or pearlescent finish, then you should be using the Rapid Scratch Remover. I asked Tetrasil, the parent company, why? What's the difference here? And they state that the Rapid Scratch Remover is less aggressive, so the abrasives in here don't cut as much. So even though it's called T-Cut and Rapid Scratch Remover, it's there to remove some damage, but not to the same extent as the original Color Restorer. So it'll be interesting to see how these two work, but this is meant to be the more modern version of it. And again, we're going to be testing these against Meguiar's Ultimate Compound. Now, interestingly, although this is a retail product, many people who buy this will be people who already own a machine polisher. The question is, has anybody before me used a T-Cut product with a machine polisher, especially the original Color Restorer? Well, we're going to find out today, because I've got one. So let's try all three on damaged paint by hand and by machine, and we'll see how they compare. So this is the far right section with the T-Cut Original Color Restorer and a damp microfiber applicator. It's a runny product, you can see there. The instructions do state use a damp cloth, but applicators are a little easier. And I'm working it in overlapping circular motions as described on the instructions. And I'm working in horizontal and vertical strokes, much like a dual action polisher would work. And you can see the product stays relatively damp here. It remains wet, and that's good because it means it works for a long time without drying out. And that's what you want when you're working by hand. Now, it also states that this needs to be allowed to dry to a haze, so with the magic of editing I have sped up the time for this to be allowed to dry up. I don't know why it needs to be allowed to dry to a haze, because it doesn't contain anything in it, like fillers or waxes or anything else. Maybe it's just to make the removal process easier. There was a bit of elbow grease required to remove it. I had to push a bit harder on that microfiber. Now is a good time to use those buttons at the bottom of the screen you see there. They look quite important. A quick flip over of the microfiber to give it a final wipe off. And we'll have an inspection, a closer inspection of this section a little bit later. Here is the Rapid Scratch Remover, again with a damp applicator. This is a thicker, more slimy product, harder to get out a small amount from the bottle, but you can see it is much thicker and stickier. And applying in exactly the same manner, circular overlapping motions, horizontal and vertical, and I'm giving it good pressure. I want to use those abrasives, I want to push it in there and try and remove the scratches and swirls. Speed things up a bit here for you. And again, it does have a wet feeling, it stays wet for longer. This doesn't state that you need to allow it to dry to a haze, you can just wipe it off. And it comes off a little bit easier than the original Color Restorer. Here's the ultimate compound from Meguiar's with a dry applicator because it doesn't state wet. And I splurted out way too much because of these horrible little dispenser nozzles which clog up with product. The product dries out and it creates a bit of a plug that you have to squeeze through, and yeah, you end up getting too much product. Now, I've never used this product by hand before. I've used it by machine plenty times, but never by hand. So the same situation again. And yes, I'm wearing headphones and I'm listening to Dolly Parton. And what I did here was basically work it long enough to engage the abrasives with pressure, essentially until my arm felt like it was going to fall off. It was the same for all three sections. Now the wipe off here, no requirement for drying. It was the easiest of the three. I'm using Go Detailing's panel wipe here. This is to remove any oils or anything that's left behind, and also to remove any adhesive left from the tape, so that we have a completely clear and clean panel ready for inspection. We don't want anything to get in the way. And then we'll have a closer look here. This is the first glance after the job, but let's get the inspection lamp on here so we can see a better idea. Up to the top where I didn't polish it, or compound it, whatever you want to call it. There's the damage. It certainly has removed some damage, but there's still some damage there. There's also a bunch of hazing going on there that you can see. And going down a little bit further, we'll show another section which I didn't touch, where it goes nice and glossy again right there. So, not bad by hand, but still leaves hazing. This is the rapid scratch remover. Again, not bad with the damage removal. There is hazing going on there, but there doesn't seem to be quite as much as the original Color Restorer. So by hand, not bad finish. This surprised me. This is the Meguiar's section. I've never used Meguiar's by hand, and it looked just as bad as the original T-Cut, to be honest. I was really surprised by this. It didn't finish down well at all. I know it's a heavy cutting compound, but I was really surprised at the poor finish of it. So there's an idea across all three. And here it is in more ambient light, so you get an idea of what it would look like outside. You can see the rapid scratch remover definitely left the best finish so far, but it would still need polishing. Very interesting to see the differences. Now on to machine polishing. Again, original scratch remover here, not scratch remover, original Color Restorer. And I'm using this orange Lake Country CCS polishing pad, and I'm using the same pad across all three sections. I made sure to stop and wash it out in between each product. And as you should always do with machine polishing, overlapping motions horizontally and vertically. And again, like I said before, it stays wet, so it allows you to work it for a long time. This may well be the very first time anyone has ever used T-Cut with a machine polisher. but I worked it until I felt it had been worked enough across the panel. But this was the first issue I ran into, was the fact that it wouldn't come off. I pushed harder and harder, and I was maybe only able to remove about 50% of it. Maybe not even as much as that, but it just didn't want to shift. I was warned about this. So I grabbed my panel wipe again and gave it a spritz, just in the hope that that would allow it to soak and free it up from the panel. And sure enough, it did. Now, the rapid scratch remover. It was hard to get a small dose out of the bottle there, so I did have to enlarge the working area that I used. But this was also good because it would allow me to see sections outside of the damaged area and what this would do to perfectly polished paint. Because off camera, before doing any of this, I made sure the panel was free from any damage, then added my own damage, so I know what it looked like before and what it looks like after. The damage itself is only in about the middle third of the section that I'm working here. Now as for buffing off, still a bit of effort required, but it was nowhere near as bad as the original color restorer, that's for sure. It came off much more easily. And again, a quick spritz of the panel wipe just to make sure nothing is left behind. And now the Meguiar's Ultimate Compound. And I've used this product many times. I know how well this product works. It does work for a good long working time. It doesn't dry out quickly. It's a very straightforward and easy product to use. I do feel that using this product there are less aggressive abrasives, but there's maybe lots more of them. That's a feature of the Ultimate Compound. It uses micro abrasives to allow you to cut but still leave a decent finish. And again, just working the product as much as I feel it needs it. And then the buff off, just like with the hand application, it came off relatively easily. Definitely, again, the easiest of the three. A quick spritz of panel wipe again, just to make sure nothing's left behind. And now we can inspect. So this is the far right section with the T-Cut Original Color Restorer. You can see there in ambient light, it's not too bad. But under my swirl finder light, that's what the paint used to look like. The damage is practically gone, but there's a lot of hazing going on there. So in the areas I've worked it with a machine polisher, it's still hazy. It would need to be refined. This is the rapid scratch remover, and you can see lots of hazing again. However, it's more even, more smooth. That might mean that it's a little bit easier to polish out afterwards because the damage is less aggressive. So it still would need to be polished afterwards. But again, it did a good job of removing the damage, so I can't argue with that. Here's the Meguiar's. This finished much better. There was a lot less hazing here compared to the other two products. This is what I've come to expect of it. It would need a polish, but it would need less polishing than the two T-Cut products. And this is what it looks like in ambient light. Definitely the Meguiar's looks the best of the three sections there. Really very surprising. One, at how good the T-Cut scratch remover was, and two, how aggressive the original color restorer is. Okay, really interesting results there. I'm not entirely sure what I was expecting. I think, honestly, I was expecting them both to be rubbish, let's be honest, because they are an old school brand, an old school name. What I will say is this is an incredibly heavy abrasive, a very aggressive abrasive in the original color restorer. It really is. Now, great for single stage paint, for lifting your oxidation, but in modern paints today, it doesn't refine the same way. It's not really going to give you the finish that you might want, especially the way we are today. We want gloss and shine. It's not going to give you that, so you're still going to have to follow it up with a finishing polish or some sort of all-in-one polish, which is going to help lift it and get rid of that haze that's left behind. The Rapid Scratch Remover was definitely a less aggressive abrasive, as they promised, and is better suited to this. But again, I would call this a compound rather than a polish. They don't say polish anywhere, to be perfectly honest. It says it safely removes swirls and marks from paintwork, but it still needs extra for finishing down. It does say the paintwork surface, after you've used it, is free from swirls and scratches and marks and prepared for repainting or polishing. So they do state that you'll need to polish after this. So it did a better job, but I was really surprised at how well it worked actually. It's certainly a good product as a compound is concerned. And then the Meguiar's Ultimate Compound performed less well than I expected as far as hand application was concerned, because it didn't finish very well at all. It was about the same as the original color restorer for hand finishing, but by machine it finished down the best of the three, and I was expecting that. I've used it many times already. It's a good product, but again, it's a compound. It's going to require polishing afterwards. So what I used across the whole panel was the Meguiar's M205. This is their ultra finishing polish with the softest pad I have, because this is super soft paint. And honestly, it just lifted everything. I got rid of all the hazing, all of the marks on there, anything that was left behind. It lifted it, it gave it great gloss and shine, and that's what's the follow-up. Now, what I will say, what is interesting about these two, is this Rapid Scratch Remover is much cheaper than Meguiar's Ultimate Compound. I think I picked this up for about £6. I think the last time I bought one of these, it was maybe £13. Prices go up and down all the time. So this was cheaper and still did a really good job of cutting. So if you don't mind a two-stage process of cutting and then polishing, this is actually pretty decent. So, very interesting results. I'd love to know what you guys think down in the comments below, if you've used any of these products, if you've enjoyed using them, if you've had different experiences, interesting experiences. I'd love to know what you guys think. But if you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and while you're there, ring the notification bell so you don't miss my next video uploads. In the meantime, I've been Specky. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.